Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're back again with another video, and this video is going to be top 10 potion saving champions for intermediate and progressing players. So I have made two videos already, one for beginner level players where I picked champions that are extremely easy to use, simple, typically also easy to acquire, and kind of are well versed for the basic content as you start playing, so you don't have to worry about too much how to use their abilities. Champions who basically just work by you playing with them. And then I had a list for endgame players, basically what is currently the best options in today's metagame considering Act 6 and things like that. And this video is going to be for majority of you guys, basically people who are currently progressing through the story content, who are exploring Act 5, maybe starting to be your toes in variants, typically do AQs maps 5 and 6 and 4, something like that. And yeah, so we're gonna start off with spot number 10, and spot number 10 is going to go to Iceman. Now Iceman is in this list due to several reasons. Number one, he's a very kind of like base, fairly simple character that has a lot of immunities. He's bleed immune, he's poison immune, he's incinerate immune. He can stop evades, and he's very good character for you to have when you're heading in Act 5. Also, he is one of good options for 615 Crossbones, who is going to help you to become Cavalier. In addition to that, if you're transitioning to kind of like more intermediate levels of the game, then all of your opponents will have their level 3s enabled, and Iceman can tank those for days with his ice armor. And in general, he's also a very forgiving character that kind of like forgives you when you mess up. You have that ice armor active, and you can take maximum 5% damage per single source in case you happen to eat like a big special attack or something. So Iceman is definitely also still fairly easy to play, very solid character that I think many accounts would definitely benefit from looking at and investing in. And he will help you 100% when it comes to AQs maps and 5 and 6, because there are already some immunity lanes appearing there. I heard that there is Hyperion boss that's annoying everybody, and Iceman can just eat those level 3s and so on and so forth. And also exploring Act 5, Biohazard is quite common in there, and there will be a lot of stuff that Iceman can help you to get through with. And that is pretty much it. And now in spot number 9, this might be a bit debatable pick, but I will still go with it because it is my list. And spot number 9, where is she? We're gonna find the 4-star. Where is my little 4-star Magic? Now Magic is again fairly simple character to play. She offers one of the best power controls in the game, and she also, if she is duped, gives you a large kind of like window for errors that you can recover from. Basically, when you get into the rhythm of playing Magic, you're going to be spamming a lot of special attacks, you're going to be filling up your power bars by stealing power from opponent, which means you're going to be in limbo quite a bit. And whenever you make a mistake, while in limbo, the only thing you have to do is wait for its duration to expire, and you're going to recover all of that health. So basically, these incredible power control mechanics, in addition with her like huge margin of error and how forgiving she is for players' mistakes, I think is a quite vital champion when it comes to dealing with intermediate content. And I know she carried me through so much in Alliance War, Alliance Quest, exploring quests. Now don't get me wrong, she's still usable in endgame content, and she still has her role in any player's roster, but I think this intermediate kind of like piece of content is where she basically comes into her own, and she can do some insanely crazy things for you if you kind of put your faith in her, rank her up, give her some 6 stones, and just let her basically. She does require some practice to use effortlessly, but even if you are fairly new to playing Magic, she will be doing some really good power control for you. And therefore I think that deservedly she is going to spot number 9 in today's list. And in spot number 8, I'm going to be putting in, where is this little guy? Archangel. So Archangel is one of those hit or miss champions, right? if he can be used, if opponent can be bled and poisoned, he's still one of the best champions in game. And even today in endgame content, there is quite large role for this guy, and every so often he becomes one of the MVPs. However, when it comes to dealing with Act 5 and you progressing through the content, things you need to know about Archangel is quite simple. If opponent can be bled and poisoned, he's gonna answer vast majority of your problems because his damage output can be absolutely insane. He's gonna deal with a lot of problem nodes by heal blocking opponents, by reducing their ability accuracy. And again, this is a champion that still maintains a decent role in today's endgame. However, where you are exploring Act 5 and dealing with like your maps 5 and so on, is where you're gonna start to fall in love with Archangel if you kind of get used to it and if you start using this guy. Because whenever he can be used, he's insane. He's still one of the greatest champions. If opponent can be bled and poisoned and he doesn't shrug off debuffs, so on and so forth. So there is like a niche place for Archangel, but every progressing player should have this guy ranked up at least as a 4-star, because 4-star can still do some insane things. I used my 4-star, I think, exploring variant, and even in variant, if you're careful, he can still serve the purpose and do the job. And yeah, he's a great champion that you want to invest fairly early on in your account progression, and that is going to save you from so much headaches. So therefore, definitely he goes in spot number 8 as your potion saving champion. And in spot number 7, now these, basically from this point forward, we're going to be going a bit more different trajectory, I suppose, in the video. And in spot number 7, it's going to be Morningstar. Now, Morningstar has a problem as a champion, that her ramp up is one of the most painful ramp ups in the game. To fully ramp her up, you basically need to finish 3 fights with a level 3 attack, or basically capture 3 souls, which means you need to throw level 3 and then hit opponent enough till you capture the soul. So that is quite a huge requirement, and unfortunately, no matter what everybody says, when it comes to Act 6 and many other areas of the game, can't really do that. That ramp up is just too punishing, and typically in many of the quests she would simply die before you are able to ramp her up fully. However, once she is ramped up, she is potentially one of the better champions in the game, definitely in kind of like top area of the game, because she gains incredible heal, she gains incredible block proficiency, really great damage output, ability to nullify all of the buffs on opponent with a level 2 basically, and some really cheesy explosive methods as well. So whilst you are still dealing with stuff like Act 5, easier AQ map, stuff like that, she will be absolutely phenomenal as like your main base champion potion saver if you manage to rank her up. Ramping her up in endgame is much harder. It still can be done in certain places, but not everywhere. And obviously Morningstar has that cheese level 2 whenever you are facing off against resistor nodes or any opponent that has a lot of buffs. She can absolutely demolish them even without any souls captured. You just need to land a couple of level 2s, Mystic Dispersion, recover your power, do that again. And there is a lot of cheese in this character as well. However, at her base abilities, ignoring the level 2, when she's ramped up, she's still insane and can definitely put so much work on her back when it comes to clearing quests, not taking damage with that huge perfect block chance, lifesteal opponents, and just finish out the fights for you. So yes, I think Morningstar deservedly goes in spot number 7, but you need to keep in mind that it is a lot of work to ramp her up. And you need to think about yourself whether you are the type of player who is willing to put in this work. Also, it is a lot more difficult to use Morningstar with suicides, so keep that in mind. And in spot number 6 is going to be Venom. Now, Venom is a fairly simple character. Basically, he stops all the evades of all of the Spider-Verse heroes, and Act 5 typically is where all of these Spider-Verse heroes live, because, well, they are also still present in all the other content, of course, but at that time it was extremely popular to put Spider-Mans everywhere as one of the main banes for people, because that evade was tricky to fight against. There were not as many answers as there are now, and well, let's face it, nobody likes to fight Spider-Man on some immunity nodes and so on and so forth, and Venom is a perfect answer for a lot of those matchups. In addition, any matchup that Venom can bleed the opponent, and ideally if the opponents have any buffs, he's going to perform absolutely fantastic for you. And Act 5, Map 5 and stuff like that, many of your opponents will have buffs. It is fairly kind of common predominator in these quests and chapters, even if the opponents just put on some physical resistances or something, or armor or buffs. They are pretty much everywhere, and Venom can feast on them and regenerate himself. Therefore, he also becomes a lot more sustainable in any matchup where opponents do have quite a bit of buffs. Now, basically, you're putting together ability to prevent all evades from Spider-Verse heroes, True Strike at 18% and unblockable special attacks to counter stuff like Iron Man Infinity Wars whenever you start to face those. Ability to buff, steal, and basically nullify opponents on your level 1 plus heal yourself, and some massive bleeds. That's a recipe for a win. And yeah, so after Venom, we're going to be taking a look at Dr. Voodoo. Now, Dr. Voodoo is the only champion that is mentioned in the beginners list as well. Other than that, I like to keep these lists completely separate, but I think Dr. Voodoo deserves a mention here as well, because in the beginners list I mentioned him in the context of basically just having a free heal at the beginning of every fight. Now, when you are starting to look past that and everything he can do, he's also an incredible champion for you to use. Basically, he can steal and nullify all of the opponent's buffs. He gets healing at the beginning of every fight. He can have an excellent power control on opponent by either power draining or power leeching, I think it is called. And he also has some extremely cheesable matchups where if opponent gets decent amount of buffs, you can just basically spam your special attacks, make sure opponent never gets to a full special attack themselves, because you can weave in some level 2s. And if you invest in the character, there is a lot of he can do, and there is a lot of utility in it, especially if he's duped, and that is a definite condition that Voodoo kind of does have to be duped. And then based on whether you're an even or odd combo, you can either increase your ability accuracy by 100%, and that will basically mean that you're still able to nullify stuff that's not really meant to be nullified if they have Mystic Ward on, and just your abilities will trigger more frequently. Or you can decrease opponent's ability accuracy, which is a huge deal, and you can increase your debuff duration length as well, which is also extremely important, especially in context of like parry stun, where you can parry stun the opponent. With this increased length, you can pretty much land like a 4-hit combo and almost play as normal against opponents which you only want to strike while they are stunned. So there's a lot of depth to the character, and I think he kind of doesn't get enough love lately, but also in my opinion he's not all that practical in the far endgame scenarios, more or less at no fault of his own. It's just how the quests and how the game is made. But it has to be said that there is a lot of utility in this champion. There are a lot of incredibly interesting things, well, what he can do, and I think he definitely deserves some attention. Therefore, he made it to spot number 5 on our today's list. And spot number 4 today is going to be Mephisto, because this list, first and foremost, after all, is for potion saving, and Mephisto is insane at that, especially if you combine Mephisto with Morningstar, which essentially lets you get 2 souls per each fight, and then Mephisto just becomes one of the powerhouses when it comes to consistency. Now, he's not one of the most explosive champions in the game. He doesn't have some sort of crazy burst amounts of damage, but he does damage opponents relentlessly and reliably, and that's kind of the best thing about Mephisto, because he has a lot of little neat tips and tricks in there, and many really great matchups. Opponent basically will start the fight with no buffs at all whatsoever. For 15 seconds they will be unable to trigger any buff as well, and then you can kind of choose whether you want to use your souls and keep opponent from gaining any buffs, or you want to max out your damage output with level 2s and level 3s and kind of like try to amp up your auras. He's also a guy that has many incredibly different cool synergies, and overall the main thing and the main rule of thumb for Mephisto is that he can't really punch upwards. He has to be used in a appropriate content to his rank. Now we have some champions, for instance, let's say Star-Lord. Star-Lord is a champion that can always overperform in a content, and even at lower ranks he can do some incredibly great things if you are extremely consistent at your play. Don't get hit, don't take too many hits in a block, and he can produce some incredible damage numbers eventually, and he can basically punch upwards. Mephisto is not one of those champions. Mephisto is a champion that has to play in a content that's relative to his rank. He cannot go up against 50 KPI opponents as a 4-star and for you to still to be able to enjoy him. No, his damage output isn't that great. Also, that sustainability has kind of like a window of how much he can sustain and recover each fight. And if you chip damage yourself more than the souls can recover the health for, obviously you're eventually going to run out and you're not going to feel that immortal aspect of this champion. But if you use him as a, let's say, rank 4 5-star and AQ map 5, you will definitely notice how easy it is, how effortless it is, how forgiving he is to your mistakes, and he can definitely save a lot of potions to you. And that basically will lead us into our top 3. Top 3 is more or less fairly set, and it's kind of funny that this list is so mystic heavy, but we are still staying with the mystic theme. And in top 3 spot is Ghost Rider. Now, Ghost Rider is a favorite champion to many people, and I have been criticized by being extremely harsh on a guy. And still, in my opinion, the unfortunate truth about the champion is that he has lost vast majority of his shine past Act 5. When it comes to Act 6, when it comes to Map 7 or high-end Alliance Wars, hardly anybody ever uses this guy for a reason. It doesn't really hit all that hard. Utilities that he does have are easily accessed, more easily accessed and more reliably accessed with some different champions. However, when it comes to your basic gameplay, sustainability and some insane healing of his heavy attack, he's still a crazy powerhouse of kind of like sustainable gameplay. He's again one of those champions that's not gonna get you anywhere fast. His damage output, even with a high sig and placing your furies correctly, is not the greatest, let's face it. But the combination of regeneration, buff control, power control, some fury, some bleed, bleed immunity, so he's also able to take biohazard and stuff like that. It's just a solid, awesome package, especially in kind of like mid-tier content, because in endgame the content becomes far too specific, the health pools become far too big, and it requires different kind of like set of qualities in a champion to shine. And unfortunately, one of those qualities quite often is damage, where Ghost Rider doesn't really have that. And the second quality is that consistency, how easily and how effortlessly you can access the certain abilities in a certain time. Ghost Rider kind of struggles with that as well occasionally, because if you drop a judgment from your level 1, you know, if you want to access it again, you will have to get level 3 and then to level 1. So there are some limitations of what he can do and the timing he can do it in, and that doesn't just serve the Act 6 nodes that great. However, Act 5, AQ Mach 5, he is such an MVP. He's a champion that you can bring in and he's gonna basically clutch you throughout the entire quest, because that regen is insane. The fact that you can trigger multiple times in a fight can help you recover so much health. And yeah, he's a fantastic champion, and obviously he has some really good synergies with another champion that's gonna still be featured on this list, and together they work even better. And Ghost Rider will definitely do an absolutely amazing job when it comes to exploring Act 5, when it comes to doing AQs in maps 5, possibly 6. 7, not so much though, so you need to know the ceiling for this character. For many people, I would kind of recommend to take him possibly to a rank 4, but not higher, because when you are going to get to the point where you're going to be able to take champions to rank 5, there will be more current alternatives, I think, to the stuff that he can do. Either way, Ghost Rider, definite awesome champion for any progressing player to have. Learn to play, use him, and enjoy that huge regeneration. And yeah, that leaves us with the top 2 spots. And spot number 2 in this case is going to be, where is that? Crazy Duck. So Venom the Duck. People were kind of upset with me that I didn't include him in the endgame list, and the unfortunate truth for me is that it's really not that easy to use him in a lot of endgame content. Now, again, once ramped up, he has incredibly huge ceiling of what he can do. The ramp up process, though, is a whole different kettle of fish, and he's a champion that I personally can use for a couple of parts in the quest, and then I'm done. Like, I'm just exhausted, because ramping him up is RNG based, and it's not an easy task to do, and you need to constantly keep a track of many things, where your power bar's at, how long till you get the new buff, hope for the new buff to be the one that you need, additionally follow opponent's power bar, opponent's health, how much you can damage them, how the fight is going, so on. There is a lot to keep in mind using Venom the Duck if you want to ramp him up properly. But if you do, and if you have the right amount of buffs for the situation, a couple of heals, some power gains, some furies, maybe a precision buff, he can be an absolutely insane powerhouse. He can regen and sustain himself for days. He can re-trigger those regens with level 3. With those power gain buffs, he can get to level 3 quickly. Additionally, if there are any furies and precisions, his damage output is insane throughout. And he's one of those champions that you're kind of sad when the quest is over and when you have to start it all over again. Because once he's ramped up, you're having an incredible, great amount of time. Plus the fact that he regens so much, basically he will typically finish the quest in full health or close to it. But then you have to start it all over again. For me, that's kind of a deal breaker. That's the reason why I haven't ranked him. In addition to the fact that because it's RNG based ramp up, it's not that easy to execute or reliable in certain endgame conditions. But again, if you are a player that is working with like basically a roster and a budget and you don't have that many great options for a job, Venom the Duck is a great kind of Swiss Army knife that can deal with a lot of content if you are willing to put the work in, and that's on you. But if you learn to use this guy, if you learn to love the guy, he can do some absolutely crazy stuff for you. So definitely check him out. There's a lot of footage available on YouTube on this dude as well. And yeah, he is a crazy potion saving machine, especially for rosters who might not have all of the utility champions available. He can kind of fill in for many of them. And that being said, we're going to move on to spot number 1. And spot number 1 is going to be our Xalpha of MCOC. Now, Blade still is relevant in endgame. Unfortunately, not too relevant. You can use him for certain situations in endgame scenarios. Of course you can. You can use him for certain situations in AQ Map 7 and Act 6 or some of the variants. Actually, variants, he has been pretty pointless, but whatever. Yes, of course you can. But he has lost a lot of his relevancy because of the nodes and the type of node that are coming. Like the newest damage over time nodes typically require you to have either shock or incinerate or poison ability, and he doesn't. Then there are just a lot of typically quite common nodes like cornered or bleed immunities or some other kind of stuff that always seem to disturb this guy. And not to mention that we have gotten so many new overpowered champions that I think he just doesn't quite measure up to the top of the top, the creme de la creme. But don't let that take anything away from this guy. He still has an incredibly useful regen, insane power gain mechanics, some crazy bleeds going on for him, and the danger sense is completely different kettle of fish. And when it comes to dealing with anything and everything with Act 5 and below and Map 6 and below, he's just a crazy machine. He is gonna do so much for you. He's gonna take matchups you don't think he can, but he somehow can, and he's gonna do things for you that you didn't think he's able to do, because that is just how crazy good he is. With that bleed damage on parries, you can cheese some fights with never actually properly hitting opponent, just largely parrying them. With that heal, you can sustain yourself and take some more block damage. That increased power gain, you can basically drop a special attack pretty much after every single combo you throw. And all of that adds up, and it's a really great experience to use the guy. And where he can be used, he's like nothing else pretty much. And unfortunately, obviously, the game has moved on. There are things he cannot do anymore. He's still a great champion, but he's suffering from the fact that he used to be the best, and if he's just a great champion now, then many people look at it as falling from grace pretty much. It's kind of like if you used to be a world champion and you lost your title and you still do well, let's say you're still somewhere in top 10 in rankings, but world largely moves on and it looks at the new world champions, which Blade is not, and he's likely not going to be. But when it comes to dealing with everything and anything that was made in his time, in his prime, he's still the world champion. If you're taking a look at Act 5, he's probably still one of the best options to take in there overall, and he's just gonna absolutely shred everything. So there's that. Game moves on, but the permanent content that was made at the time for his prime dominance is still there, and you can still have that feeling of an absolute legend stepping into an Act 5 and just destroying everything. And therefore Blade is in spot number 1 for intermediate and progressing players. And that will pretty much do for today's video. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button, hit that sub button. If you are ready to make a step from intermediate and progressing to the end game player, then I will leave a link in the description for that video as well. And that will pretty much do for today. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, hit the like button, hit the sub button, hit all the buttons. And I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya.